Hi, my name is Afi. Here's a short look at the DJI OSMO Pocket in 2020. Now I've been using the OSMO Pocket for nearly around a year now, and I think it's enough time for me to give my thoughts on it. So the DJI OSMO Pocket is a 3-axis gimbal which can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second. Now I think it's quite great that you can shoot it in this small of a package. It has this little 3-axis gimbal stabilizer which makes the footage quite stable. Now it can be had for around $369 US from which I see in Amazon, so it's quite a decent price. Even if it allows 3-axis stabilization, it doesn't correct the up and down movement, the bouncing movement when we walk around. Now because the device is so light, it's hard to actually kind of get a stable footage from it. It's a lot easier to get stable footage if the device you're using is heavier. It's a completely capable small video machine. Now the field of view is not that wide. I think it's at about 82 degrees field of view, so it's okay, but my OSMO Action is a lot more wider. Now the small size of the OSMO Pocket is quite handy. You can practically bring it with you at all times. Now I've practically taken the OSMO Pocket everywhere. It's not the most durable machine. On my unit you can already see some scratches, and I wouldn't be comfortable dropping in the OSMO Pocket. It is also not as rugged as the OSMO Action, so if it rains, you'd be wise to keep it protected. Now I actually like to use the OSMO Pocket for hyperlapses and time lapses as well. Now with hyperlapses, you basically have that stable gimbal to hold the shot, so it's quite great. If you're walking about, you can make some really quick hyperlapses. Now I shoot the hyperlapse by essentially recording long videos and just speed it up later in post. So that's how I do it. If you like to take a time lapse, if you're in place, you can actually use the head of the gimbal and point at where you want to shoot. You basically set a beginning point and an end point, and you set the duration, and then you're off to go. Now I think one of the main weaknesses of the OSMO Pocket, if you're using this time-lapse feature, is that it only records in 1080p. There's no 4K option for it, so in terms of resolution it loses out. So for traditional time lapses, I prefer to use my OSMO Action rather than use the OSMO Pocket. Now for low light performance, as with my OSMO Action video, again the same thing can be said with the OSMO Pocket. Essentially it uses a small sensor at 1/2.3 inches. If it's really dark, then you're gonna see a lot of noise. If you're in a well lit space, it would be a lot better. Now with the OSMO Pocket being that lightweight, you can see that even if I try to hold the OSMO Pocket still, you can still see some movement in the shot. In addition, I think because it's so small, even if I'm not turning or panning with the OSMO Action, it sort of drifts to the side on itself, so that's a bit weird to me. Now, one of the other weaknesses of the OSMO Pocket is that it doesn't have Wi-Fi. You have to connect your phone to the OSMO Pocket. Now to be honest, I really don't like connecting my phone to the OSMO Pocket using that USB-C connector, because it feels a lot of fiddly and it essentially makes the setup a lot bigger, which I think defeats the purpose of using the OSMO Pocket. So I like to use the OSMO Pocket as is and try to take it everywhere in my pocket. So essentially I use it without using my phone with it. The OSMO Pocket also has some color options to it. For example, you have that Cinelike D profile, which I like to use a lot. Now check out in the description below for a free lookup table to color grade that Cinelike D color profile. Currently I'm testing the OSMO Pocket with the Ulanzi OP9 4th axis stabilizer, but I'm still working on it. That video might be coming out soon. So I hope that using that accessory eliminates the fourth axis, the bouncing of the up and down bouncing motion, which I think looks quite annoying. If DJI wants to release an OSMO Pocket 2, I think some improvements like using a bigger sensor, maybe having a 1-inch sensor from the Mavic 2 Pro would be great. Having a wireless connection may also be an option. Say if I want to control the gimbal through my phone wirelessly without connecting to anything, would be kind of great. Now the battery life is actually okay in my opinion. You can get around an hour of shooting, at least that's what I've been consistently getting, and I tend to shoot at 4K at 50 frames per second. I think that if the OSMO Pocket 2 comes out, it should have a bigger screen, so it makes a lot easier to control the gimbal with it. Currently with the 1-inch screen, I think it's a bit tricky to control it. You can essentially only use it for composing. You can't really check anything else, and sometimes using the touchscreen is kind of finicky because it is so small. Maybe if the screen was 1.5 inches bigger, it would be a lot better, but that will probably make the OSMO Pocket a lot more bigger, which I'm not sure how DJI is going to solve that, but maybe more physical buttons. I think it would be a lot better if DJI could build in some of those accessories such as the wheel scroll into the OSMO Pocket, rather than having it as an accessory that you need to purchase separately. I've also used the OSMO Pocket handheld when I'm riding a car, so you can see that the footage is quite stable. If you can look closely into the reflection, you can see that my hands are wiggling about, so I'm not at all holding it steadily. You can see that the gimbal does help dampen my shakiness a lot, and the footage looks sharp. Now for the best settings, I recommend shooting it at 4K at 50 frames per second, because you have a lot more frames to use when you're stabilizing it post-production. Now it eats a lot more memory compared to when you're using 25 frames per second, but I think that it's enough. Now I use it with a 64GB memory card, and I think that's enough for a full day of shooting. Now spec-wise, comparing the OSMO Pocket to the OSMO Action, they both have a similar 1/2.3 inch sensor, but the OSMO Pocket has a narrower field of view at 80 degrees, so it's a 25.7mm equivalent f2 lens, as opposed to the OSMO Action's 445 degree field of view, which is a lot more wider. Now they both have the same 12 megapixel resolution, and both can shoot at 4K 60 frames per second, so it's quite good. Now if you take a look at this clip, you can see the difference between the field of view of the OSMO Pocket and the OSMO Action. You can see that the OSMO Action is a lot wider than the OSMO Pocket. Now in this shot, you can see that I'm panning with the OSMO Pocket, and this is using one of the time-lapse settings in it. Now I think that using an optical image stabilization is a lot better than the electronic image stabilization in certain aspects. This can be seen in low light conditions, where the OSMO Action will produce those blurry artifacts and smudgy image. You can see that the OSMO Pocket is a lot more cleaner. Now they both have noise, so they have nothing to write home about, but both are okay. Now I quite like that the OSMO Pocket has this pouch that you can use, and it keeps it safe. But I think that DJI could make it a little bit better by maybe including a tripod mount at the bottom of the case. So if you want to mount it, or probably the OSMO Pocket itself needs a tripod mount, because presently it can't stand on its own, it will fall down. It would be great if it can stand on its own, so if you make those time lapses, you don't really need to do anything else. You just set it up and leave and let it do its job. I think that would be a much needed solution for people who like taking time lapses with it. Now another strange problem that I encountered using the Osmo Pocket is that when I'm using it in my car, it essentially tells me to hold the Osmo Pocket upright. So that's one of the other weaknesses. You can't really mount it to your car and just set a time lapse on it. Now this persists if you're using it in the panning time lapse. I think it's called the motion lapse in the Osmo Pocket. So when you're mounting it on a car, you can see that the image zigzags out of control, looking really funky, but not at all usable. Now in conclusion, I think that the Osmo Pocket is quite good, and I think it complements the Osmo Action side by side. I would gladly recommend the Osmo Pocket. Now if you only need either one of those cameras or you have the budget for one, I'd say get the Osmo Action because I use that a lot more than the Osmo Pocket. Any suggestions and comments are welcome, so please leave them in the comments section below. Let me know if you still use your Osmo Pocket, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys later. See you.